Hello grade 8s, welcome to WorksheetCloud. This is grade 8 English, and if you have a question during this lesson, please just pop us an email with that question and we'll get back to you. Hello everyone again, I'm Mrs. Goslet and I'll be teaching you English today. Now we're going to do something very exciting, and I'm going to give a little background information on the play Romeo and Juliet. Now, this play we did at my school actually in grade 9, but I just love it and my learners love it because who doesn't love a little bit of juicy gossip and, well, let's not say it's gossip, it's more of like a love story where there's conflict. We all love our soapies. I just want to tell you a little bit about William Shakespeare. His plays have something for everybody. I have so many of my learners, I think the older you get, in grade 10 and 11, you kind of like, okay, we know how he writes, we understand him, but why do we have to learn about him all the time? Or why do we always just do his plays? So I always tell my learners that there is always something that we can relate to. Othello, you'll do that when you get older. Oh my goodness, one of my all-time, I love it. It's so scandalous about what a handkerchief can do. So it's quite, I love it. And it's also nice when my learners enjoy something. So there's nothing better than going to class or just knowing when my grade 11s walk through that door, they're going to say, ma'am, please can we read Othello? Or my grade 9s last year, ma'am, please can we do Romeo and Juliet? And there's nothing more satisfying when a learner is excited about your subject. Because I know with English, you guys have to do it. So it's not like you chose to do biology or you chose to do consumer studies. You have a passion for it. Whereas English, you have to do. So sometimes it's really nice when the learner is excited. So let's get back to Shakespeare. He writes about all classes of people, so everyone can take something away. He shows us the tragedies that can result from arranged marriages, family feuds, and a failure to love others properly. He exposes deceit and hypocrisy. The Globe Theatre. Now, my face is in the way. Let's move myself. So if you can have a look here, it's round, it's circular, and here's the stage over here, and then here are all the lavish seats, you may call it, all the high paying. So let's have a look here. You could get into the Globe Theatre for a penny and stand during the whole play. So I would struggle with that because standing for the entire play can be quite tiring. Or you could pay a little bit extra for a seat, but most people stood, and they were called the groundlings. So we're going to just look at the plot and the summary. So I'm not going to give away too much. Most of you do know the storyline, and many of you actually watched the movie. There's a new movie. I'm not too sure on the actors. I think her name is Hayley. She's actually a singer. I think it is. And then, I could be wrong. And then there's a oldie with Leonardo DiCaprio. I love him. So I enjoy that one. But that's a bit of a different take on it because it has guns. And it is quite different, but it's very enjoyable, and most of my learners enjoy that one. Okay, so let's get into it. An age-old vendetta between two powerful families erupts into bloodshed. A group of masked Montagues risk further conflict by gate-crashing a Capulet party. A young lovesick Romeo Montague falls instantly in love with Juliet Capulet. Now this is where my learners some of them go, oh, it's so cute. He saw Juliet and it was love at first sight. And some of my other learners are like, that's a bit sketchy, because he was in love with Rosalind, and now all of a sudden he gate crashes a party. He sees Juliet and he just forgets about Rosalind. So Juliet's actually, her father wants her to marry Paris. So with the help of Juliet's nurse, the women arrange for the couple to marry the next day. So this happens all very quickly, which also many of you will question. But Romeo's attempt to halt a street fight leads to the death of Juliet's own cousin. His name's Tybalt, for which Romeo is banished, and we'll expand a little bit more on that a bit later. In a desperate attempt to be reunited with Romeo, Juliet follows the friar's plot, so he comes up with a plan of how to bring them back together. So he had good intentions, but it resulted in a tragedy. Okay, and so she fakes her own death. But the message fails to reach Romeo. Now, in this time, there were no cell phones, so you couldn't just send a message and then he would get it. You would actually have to physically get someone to go and deliver the message. And so he doesn't get it in time, and news travels to him that she has died. So you can imagine how heartbroken he feels, because he's been banished. He's far away. He can't just quickly go and see her and speak to her, or I don't want to give too much away. I always tend to spoil things. The setting is Verona, Italy, but Romeo gets banished, so he actually goes to Mantua. It's always good to know. Then Shakespeare always has a 5-part play. In Act 1, it's our exposition, so that's our introduction, and it just establishes a setting. We find out who the characters are and what the conflict is and the background. So we know they're in Italy. We meet Benvolio and Romeo, so the Montagues, and we hear there's been this long feud. Nobody knows what really happened, but the families despise one another. So that's the conflict. And then a little bit of background, we meet Romeo, and he is in love, and he's so sad because Rosalind is not giving the feelings back to him, if that makes sense. Unrequited love. So then they try and cheer him up and say, come, let's go to the party, let's gate crash, let's just go and try and get your mind off of it. Then Act 2 is the rising action. So this is where a series of complications actually happen. And then also the turning point, the crisis. So they're not allowed to be together, but they're in love. What do? Do they run away and elope because their family will never allow it? Also, she's supposed to marry Paris. So what does she do? She's trapped. Then the falling action. So this is the results of the turning point. Characters locked into deeper disaster. So Romeo sent away. They had a plan to get, and then that whole plan changes. In our climax, our resolution, that is where, okay, I kind of ruined it, but anyway, we kind of skipped it. But if you want to read further, and if you want to watch the movie, you're most welcome to. I'm sure you will do this play. So here are the different characters. So we've got here the Lord and Lady Montague, Romeo Montague, Benvolio, Mercutio, Paris. Okay, he doesn't really play a big role, but I guess, and Friar Lawrence. He helps Romeo and Juliet try to bring them back together. Then we have the Lord and Lady Capulet, Juliet Capulet, so she's the only child, and that's quite important. Tybalt, it's her cousin, and the nurse. The nurse has looked after Juliet since she was a baby, so she's very close to the nurse. She's like her own mom. Well, she's like a mother figure to her. So I've got here, to understand the play, we need to understand how the characters link with one another. So many a time, my learners get confused with Benvolio. Whose side is he on? So remember, Tybalt is on Juliet's side, Benvolio is Romeo's side. These are the pictures just from the movie. This is when he sees her. He is, also Titanic, that movie. He is just, a young Leonardo is very beautiful. Here, this is when they meet, and he is instantly, he's just fallen in love with her. And here's just a little, I like to show this to you guys just so you get a good picture. So we've got the central Romeo and Juliet because the story is about them. Friar Lawrence is also there as he tries to mediate and help them. He marries them. The nurse, she's not very happy with the plan that they, well, she doesn't really like Romeo. She rather wants Juliet to marry Count Paris. And here's, yeah, the Lord and Lady Capulet, and there's Tybalt, the cousin, Benvolio's his friend and his cousin, there's his parents, and Mercutio, just a relative. So we just see how they all link. Then themes. This is just a reminder if you're not sure what a theme is. Themes are messages a writer wants to communicate with his or her audience. And in our next lesson, or in one of the other lessons, I'll show you how we actually go through Act 1, Scene 1. And it's just important to note that especially for grade 10, 11, and 12, it's really important to know the plot and the storyline. But when you write an essay, they always want you to analyze themes and characters. They will always go hand in hand. And where you guys sort of miss the boat is you just retell the story. But it's important to know the story and facts and details, because whatever question they're asking you about, maybe a theme about relationships or fights or feuds or marriage or anything like that, you must be able to link it to characters. So that's quite an important skill to learn from now already. Grade 8, they will only ask you basic questions. Maybe they'll ask you to write a little paragraph about certain characters or themes, just to get you used to the idea of actually knowing the character and knowing themes. Because they go in quite, I mean, there's so much detail we can learn about Romeo and Juliet. And yeah, but in grade 8 and grade 9, it's a lot simpler. So knowing your plot is very important, your storyline. And if you do read the story in the beginning of the year and you get tested at the end of the year, I always tell my learners, go on to Course Hero. They've got lovely YouTube videos of summaries just to refresh your mind if you're more a visual learner, because we all learn differently. And if you're more of a or visual and audio, but if you prefer just reading, and you can also just look up summaries online, it's really helpful. So themes, the writer always wants to communicate. So Shakespeare wanted to show us that just because they had this petty feud and this fight between these two families, and there was this miscommunication, they lost a lot. They lost their children, either by they were going to run away and do what they wanted by disobeying them and not being in their lives. And obviously this all results in a tragedy. So here's some symbols in the play. Now, symbol, light and dark, religion, dreams, stars. So I'll talk more about that a bit later. So what Romeo and Juliet starts with is called the prologue. So the prologue can also be seen as a summary of the play Romeo and Juliet. The prologue is delivered by the chorus. The chorus is usually a group of actors. However, in Romeo and Juliet, the chorus is a single actor. The chorus delivers the prologue in a 14-line sonnet. So this sounds a bit random because it's almost like, let's just get to the point. But it's important. The prologue is setting the scene, and here it says, it describes two noble households in the city of Verona. These two noble households include the Capulets and the Montagues. So it's Shakespeare's way of introducing these two who are feuding. Okay, they are of the same high status. So they should not be worried, because usually in those times you sort of stuck with the same class. So if Romeo was from a lower class, the family would be opposed. They would say, no, you're bringing nothing into this. You're going to lower our reputation. So if they had met Romeo and there wasn't this age-old feud, they probably would have loved him because he came from money and wealth and good status, as you see, high status. The prologue informs us that the Capulets and Montagues have an ancient grudge, so it goes far back. This ancient grudge results in bloody clashes. So they've been fighting for years. Tybalt and Romeo and people before that, they just hate each other. And we don't know why. The feud is becoming violent, and ordinary citizens are involved. Fate steps in when the feuding families give birth to unfortunate lovers. So this actually could have been the reconciliation this family, or both sides, needed. The stars predict a tragic fate for them. So the stars aligned and destiny said, this is what it's going to be. We are going to teach you a lesson that having a feud and not even knowing what it's about or carrying it on is really, you need to reconcile, you need to ask for forgiveness, you need to move on. Children from the two households, Romeo and Juliet, will fall in love. Okay, we've spoken about that. And they become victims of unkind fate and face unfortunate, tragic incidents. So I think most of you know what's going to happen, and most of you do know. Only with their deaths, whoops, I ruined it, I do apologize, is their parents' feud ends. So because they die, they realize we've made a huge mistake, which is very sad and a lesson learned. The course of their doomed love and their deaths eventually bring an end to the hatred. So it had to take them dying for the two families to come together. Okay, so fate and destiny we spoke about, the themes. So now these are the themes that are prominent in the prologue. So remember, every single scene will have a theme, well, mostly. There's also conflict. Okay, this will be shown in the analysis of the prologue. Okay, so this is what my text actually looks like that I teach from, because it's quite handy to have the Shakespeare spelled wrong. I don't know what happened there, but it's a translation. So this is normally the book that you get, and it's quite confusing. Two households, both alike in dignity, in fair Verona, where we lay our scene from ancient grudge break to new mutiny, where civil blood makes civil hands unclean. From forth the fatal loins of these two foes, foes is an enemy, so if we look here it should say, where is it? Yeah, so they hold their grudge. So this is just telling us what this is about. But your teacher will definitely explain it to you. And that's just dipping our feet and toes into the water of William Shakespeare. I hope you thoroughly enjoyed this. I do apologize for ruining the story, but hopefully you already knew it and I was just going over it. But Romeo and Juliet instantly have so much love for each other that they just want to be together, and they know that they can't even go to their parents and say, I'm in love with Romeo, I'm in love with Juliet, we're going to get married. It's just not going to happen for them. So their destiny and their fate was always going to end in tragedy. So they did try and run away, but because of lack of communication or miscommunication, it doesn't end that way. Okay, then the activity you can do for me afterwards. And then if you have any questions, you're most welcome to send us an email and we'll get back to you if you're a little bit confused or if you're upset that I ruined the story. Don't worry, my learners from grade 8 to grade 12 always tell me this, that I ruin stories. Before we go, we always do a little bit of motivation just to pick ourselves up and, you know, just to feel a bit better. I feel like a positive mind can achieve so much. Sometimes we all have those days where we just negative, but self-talk, just tell yourself, let's be positive. Then your vibe, the vibe you give off is positive, and everybody wants a little bit of that positivity. And then the last one is then you'll have a positive life. Just think of maybe have that one person in your life that you vent to, because it's so important. You know, you don't want to have a group where you're negative all the time, because then the people around you will start feeling, oh, what's wrong with her? She's always complaining, or why is she always tired? So I always, every morning when I wake up, if I'm feeling good, if I'm feeling bad, if I'm feeling bleh, okay, I always message my mother-in-law, Jennifer Goslet. She is the most positive person. She always turns something into being positive and happy. Or if you're just feeling down, I just send her a message. I'm like, I need to come see you for coffee. She just lifts my spirits, and then I can go out there and be positive. So I really appreciate her, and I hope all of you have a Jennifer Goslet in your life. And cherish those people, and hopefully you can also be a Jennifer Goslet. I always say I'm going to channel my inner Jenny, because that just means there's positive vibes, there's positive mind, and there's positive life. I hope that helped a little bit if you're going through a tough time. Just sometimes we all need a bit of a love and a vent, and there's nothing wrong with that, but then we change it up. And there's one thing she always says, which I think is I've always taken it on. If the holiday is over, she'll say to me, don't worry, it's one more day closer to our next holiday. So always say that to yourself. If it's a Monday and you don't feel like going to school, you don't feel like homework, just say it to yourself, it's one more day and then I can have my holiday. Okay, grade 8s, I really hope you enjoyed my lesson. Thank you so much for watching. This lesson was brought to you by WorksheetCloud, and I'll check you soon.